Nithyanandam. Hi, this is Ma Ovia returning to you again. Thanks for watching. I wanted to continue where I left off in my story, and that was basically how I explained how I had a Kundalini awakening given to me by my guru, my master, His Holiness Paramahamsa Nithyananda. And that was during a 2-day program that happened through internet. So it was basically, I didn't even meet him, I didn't even see him or lay eyes on him physically, but through a two-way connection, because he's a living incarnation, he was able to pass on that Shakti pot to awaken my Kundalini. So during the time after that now, I expressed also how I had a drinking issue and how after that day I never touched another drink again. But let's be a little bit come clean. I did have this much because the following weekend, after I got back from the program, I had a birthday party with a bunch of friends, like 50 people, for one of my other friends. And the tradition was we often went to Irish pubs. If anyone's ever frequented those places, you pretty much need to have something in front of you. So I did order the usual pint of, whatever it was, Guinness, and I sipped it. I sipped a little bit of it so people wouldn't bother me because I didn't know what was going on with me, and I did not want to explain it to anybody there at that time. I wasn't ready. But somehow towards later in the evening, people did notice, why aren't you drinking? What's wrong with you? I'm like, I'm fine, I'm good, and they just couldn't understand why I wasn't my usual self in complete unconsciousness, but I was just changed. And I felt at times, if I felt a little uncomfortable or unused to that situation, being around so many people, I went into the bathroom. And if I just stopped for a moment and closed my eyes, I could actually feel that energy moving inside me. So actually having that experience, that blessing to actually feel the Kundalini energy and a certain vibration move in my system, it was a huge help for me, especially from that time in February through and middle of November of that year is actually when I came to India to meet Swamiji for the first time. Mostly I was over that kind of addiction and other things, but following this new path was difficult at times because I started to change. I started to not feel I wanted to do the same things anymore. I started to want to seek more for answers. Now that I realized that there was a way I can find answers, I didn't have to wait till I died and maybe I'd get some glimpse of the unknown. I could find these things out now. I started to cognize that that was true. So I began to read books, talk to other people, and I began to, of course, watch Swamiji's discourses every day. But through it all, through the grace he gave me of awakening my Kundalini, that was my my anchor. So when things got difficult, or if I couldn't explain or understand or believe, how is this happening? This isn't really happening. There's no such thing as all of these things. All I had to do is for a moment stop and feel that pulsating energy inside me. And I knew that it was real and that it was happening. And I was able to have that strength from it. It was so valuable for me, especially if you've ever been addicted to anything, or if you've ever been unhappy or stressed in life, how hard it is to come out of that. And to simply just come out of that, and then just sort of your mind logically wants to question, how did it happen? Is it true? So it was, like I said, just totally anchored me into the whole spiritual path. It's such a blessing. So then I decided that I had to come meet Swamiji, and I wanted to do the Inner Awakening program, which is a 21-day meditation retreat. And I wanted basically a residential retreat where you come and you stay at the ashram and you do the course with Swamiji. And you get to experience the temple living, the sattvic food, just in Swamiji's presence. I really didn't know much of what it was about, but I just knew for some reason I had to be here. I had to be in his presence because it was such a inspiration and wake-up call, and just I knew in my being something was important happening to me. So I decided to move into that line and start thinking of when I would go. And I actually ran into some obstacles because a year before that I purchased my own home. So there was a mortgage, there was a job. If I left the job for 3 weeks, would I have a job when I get back? What if something happened to the house and I had to make some big payment or some repair? Because I had only a limited amount of money in my bank account, actually, because I always live my life paycheck to paycheck. So it was a gamble for me to spend money and come to India for this program. So taking the time off work, who's going to watch my cats? Who's going to watch the house? Where is this money going to come from? I did have some of the money paid or saved up, and I knew the rest I can save. But beyond paying for it, what other money did I have in the bank? It's a big scare for people to go against that security blanket of having a little money. And it was a little bit magnified by my Purvashram parents, definitely, because there were some issues that could come up with the home. And that was their upbringing, and their love was for the home. You know, that was their passion to keep a nice home. So that was getting reflected on what I wanted. But what I felt I was starting to develop is a desire to follow the spiritual path in my life. That some of these material things, which I didn't always care about, I felt, you know, sometimes we pick those things up from the people that are close around us. So I was feeling a lot of insecurity about my decision. And I was actually considering of putting off going to Inner Awakening. I was going to go in October and November, and then I was thinking, well, maybe I'll put it off until, you know, April of the next year. But something happened, I don't know what. I got one phone call from some wonderful person from the ashram. You know, she just talked to me for a couple minutes, you know, and I just thought, God, I'm really going to miss out. I just felt that I would miss out on something. She just was telling me a little bit about Swamiji, and that was all. So anyhow, when I got off the phone, I'm like, I cannot listen to other people anymore. I have to listen to myself, and I have to go. So within a couple of days, I actually made my deposit. And I started to move forward in the process of getting the visa and all of those things. And it caused a little bit of a, you know, ripple, and people like, what are you doing? Even people at work, they couldn't understand how I would spend this money. What am I doing this for? You know, everybody being sort of logical and practical. But I just knew that I had to come. So I'll fast forward to the time when I did come, leaving the first time, you know, coming to India by myself. I only took one other trip before by myself, and that was to England. I went there for 10 days, but people still spoke English. You know, it was still comfortable, right? But here I was going alone to India, like a 24-hour plane ride and whatever else. But I really didn't feel nervous. I felt excited and I felt relaxed. And everything seemed to happen very smoothly. So I basically got here after traveling, and the sun was coming up, and it was just this beautiful rose color. And, you know, I was pulling my suitcase through the sand and, you know, going to check in at the welcome center, and I just felt so grubby. But I'm like, satsang was happening in 10 minutes. And I'm like, I cannot miss seeing Swamiji. I cannot bathe and do all those things, whatever you're supposed to do. I have to see him. I'm here. So the lady let me keep my luggage, and I ran into the hall. I ran in there, and I opened up the door, and this incense hit me, and the smell of the incense, and I was so excited, and I look, and there's Swamiji sitting on the stage. And it's like he saw me, like, come in. I felt like he was looking right at me. And I was looking at him, and I felt like a kid almost. I felt like so gentle and humble, and I was coming in, and I was just looking at him, and I felt such an awe. He looked golden to me. He looked as if, you know, when you see this morning golden, or this morning sort of mist, it was almost as if these mist particles of gold were around him. I couldn't believe it. He was God sitting there. I couldn't believe it, and I just kind of walked in, and I sat down, and I was like, okay, here I am. So that was my first experience of laying eyes on Swamiji for the first time. It was very beautiful and amazing. And so many more beautiful things happened during that inner awakening, which I'll talk about more in our next episode. But thank you for tuning in today, and I will see you next time. Nithyanandam.